manage some tech stuff again. All right. So we are not going to have everybody introduce themselves live. Don't worry about that. But we will direct you to the chat, which I should make sure is available. It should now be available, where you can drop your name, pronouns, any access needs you might have. We usually ask folks to offer what neighborhood in West Seattle or beyond that you're from. And we usually have a check-in question. And so our check-in question for this month is share something that you've discovered or maybe a new routine that you've adopted because of the bridge detour. You know, a lot of folks are going ways that they maybe never even knew existed until the bridge went out. And so is there something new that you're doing? I know for me, going down south there and passing by Fresh Flowers is a lot more tempting and something that we did not pass as often when we just hopped on the bridge here in the north end where I am in North Delridge. If you didn't, and so let us know what you're doing. And if you didn't get our reminder this week about this month's meeting and you'd like to be added to our WSTC email list, you can go there and switch to send a direct private message to John Wright, who's one of our fellow board members, and you can just give him your email address and let him know to add you to our list, and we'll make sure you get a reminder next month. And with that, our quick pause for board members. We need to approve previous meeting minutes from December, which Kate sent out a week ago, Kate? Something like that. At any rate, hopefully you saw that. And folks who want to see either our December meeting or past meetings can go to our YouTube site, which has that really ugly address right now. Or you can go to our Facebook page. If you go to YouTube, just do a search for West Seattle Transportation Coalition, and you'll find something that looks like the graphic there below. I would entertain a motion to approve previous meeting minutes.
I make a motion.
Thank you, Victoria. Is there a second?
Second from Deb.
Thank you, Deb. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any board members opposed? And any abstentions? Kate, you can mark me as an abstention since I ducked out of the meeting after the intro last time. I figure I'll not vote on the minutes. It sounds like the motion carries. And with that, we are only running a minute behind. We are at the top of our agenda here with a conversation with Washington State Ferries. We're joined tonight by Nicole McIntosh, who's the Chief of Staff there, Hadley Rodero, who's been with us before, Strategic Communications Manager, and David Sowers, Director of Terminal Engineering. I believe David's been with us before as well. For communications, you can send email to that email address there, which is dedicated to the project. And again, if you want to learn more, you can learn more on their website. They have a page dedicated to this. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And I believe Hadley has some things to share with all of us.
Okay, I'm going to try to share now that I think I can override your, there you go.
I believe so. Here we are.
Everybody see our slides?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm just going to give a brief intro and I'll turn it over to Nicole and David. Thank you very much for having us. I believe the last time we updated you on this project was in June 2021, and a lot has happened since then. And we just really want to thank John Wright and Victoria Nelson for serving on our community advisory group and hopefully keeping you updated in between our presentations. So with that, we'll get going. We're going to start with some slides on the project itself, the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal Replacement Project, and then we'll move into some slides on our current service plan for the Fauntleroy-Vashon Southworth route and some of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on Washington State Ferries as a whole and on this route in particular. And then we're happy to answer any questions. So with that, David, I will start your slides. You can take it away.
All right, thanks, Hadley, and thank you, Michael, for allowing us to come tonight and present on this. I'm going to be your warm-up act to the service discussion that Nicole's going to lead here after going through a half dozen or so slides. Again, I'm David Sowers. I'm the Director of Terminal Engineering for Washington State Ferries and oversee all the design, planning, permitting, and construction of our 19 different ferry terminals. You probably have seen the work that's going on at Coleman Dock these days. We've just recently finished up the Mukilteo Ferry Terminal kind of redevelopment, and it's a brand new facility that we're really proud of. And next on our list is the Fauntleroy Trestle Replacement. So I'm going to go through a few slides here and talk a little bit about what's going on out there, and then talk about where we're at. I think we last met with you all in June, so some of you have seen some of these slides. I know John and Victoria have. So some of this will be a little bit of a refresher, and some of it will be new. I'll take questions at the end of Nicole's presentation. So,
David, can you see the slide?
Yep.
I just lost it for a minute. Okay, it's back.
Yep,
Great.
sure can. So this is the terminal. You can see in the picture on the right, the old built in 1950s piling that support the trestle, and the reason we show this photo is you can see at the base of that piling a wrap of kind of reinforcement and concrete to kind of strengthen that pile. These piles are well over 60 years old, and some of them are in pretty poor shape. We replace a few of them every year, it seems like, and it's one of the big reasons for this project. In addition, the terminal is seismically vulnerable because of the age of these structures and the liquefiable soils along the beach there. So this slide's trying to demonstrate some of the things that need to happen from a structural perspective. One of the other reasons for the project is climate change and the elevation of the facility. In this photo, you can see the dock is at high tide is almost, the water is almost lapping up against the bottom of the deck, and here you can see timbers, driftwood kind of banging into that structure. It can damage it. It can certainly damage the utilities that hang underneath the facility. So this terminal is one of the lowest from an elevation standpoint in all of our inventory, and part of the replacement project is to raise the dock several feet and to deal with this issue as well as climate change as it's predicted, and the potential rise of the sea level several feet over the next 75 years. So those are some of the things that we're looking at as a structure. The other major thing that we want to address is just the operations of the facility. And so this terminal is, as many of you know, holds only about 80 vehicles, which is less than our boats that serve this route. And so one of the challenges with the crew has out there on the dock is trying to manage a multi-destination terminal with a capacity of holding that's less than the boat itself. And so consequently, on many of our peak sailings, we have traffic that backs up onto Fauntleroy Way, and that traffic can go all the way up past the park. The other operational issue here is the intersection, really, for exiting traffic, and many of you know this is not a signalized intersection at Fauntleroy Way, and you have that weave that happens as people are getting off the boat and they're trying to scramble to get in position to turn either left or right. The closure of the West Seattle Bridge has brought even more attention to this intersection, because the old traffic pattern was to head left, and now more folks are heading right. So it's just a real problem area for us as we look at this whole facility. How can we improve flow through that intersection? How can we make it safe for folks that are trying to cross and get to the bus stop on the other corner, or bikes, motorcycles? There's a lot of things that go on at this terminal. If you really want to have an enjoyable afternoon of watching people and cars, sit down there for an hour, and there's just all sorts of things that the engineers and the amateur engineers look at it and just scratch your head. So we're trying to deal with all that in this project. So what we've embarked on in the last year is what's called the Planning and Environmental Linkages process. This is a fairly new process for Washington State Ferries. At WashDOT, we've done a couple of projects using Pell as a way to work in the early parts of the overall environmental process. It involves a lot of coordination with the local community, yourselves, the local agencies like SDOT and King County, and then the tribes. And so this process is intended to help us streamline and come up with alternatives that then get pushed into the more formal environmental process. We call it NEPA or SEPA, where we develop an EIS or an environmental assessment. And from there, we come up with a preferred alternative, and then we have a project. So this sets that stage for that environmental process overall. Really, this whole project began as part of our long-range plan in 2019. And in that, there was a lot of look at this particular terminal and how we could deal with the operational challenges for us. The Pell process outlined here in I'll say 4 different steps has us developing a purpose and need statement, which I'll talk about in a minute here. And then from there, developing some criteria in which we'll evaluate alternatives that the community and our technical advisory groups kind of develop. From there, we go into what's called a fatal flaw analysis. We'll look at several of those, using the screening criteria, we'll look at some of those alternatives. And then from that, move into a level 2 screening analysis. We're really trying to dial in on what the preferred alternative should be. From that comes a report, and then that launches us into the formal environmental process, which is used around the country. The SEPA is the State Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, that involves the environmental impact statement and flushing out all of the potential impacts of the project and how we can coordinate with the community and all of our stakeholders to get to a construction project. So we've kind of wrapped up the purpose and need for the project. We did that in collaboration with the community, and some of you participated in that. I'll talk a little bit about our advisory groups in a minute, but what we've done is we try to define what the problem is. I showed you a couple slides at the beginning of, the seismic and structural vulnerabilities of the facility. We talked a little bit about operations. Those are the purposes behind the project. It's not that complicated to look at the facility and see that it needs to be replaced. And so then the need portion of that statement is really the analytics of how we would then solve the problem. And the analytics, when I say that, I mean ridership, on-time performance, the throughput of the traffic, per hour, per peak period. Those types of analytics are then used to support this statement, and from that we then can develop alternatives. So the purpose statement here, I've talked a little bit about some of those things in the previous slides about the structural vulnerabilities and sea level rise. I want to kind of highlight the last 2 bullets on here, which I did talk about earlier, which is just providing efficient and safe loading and importantly, fair processing for all modes of traffic. That's another important purpose of this process. And I know that we've had a lot of folks talking about how we could better process our fares and process people through the toll booths. And so we're going to be looking at that as part of this project. And then the last one I wanted to mention, just improve the overall connectivity for the route and make this as multimodal as possible. Interesting fact that this is one of the least used high occupancy vehicle terminals in all of our inventory. Meaning there's more single occupancy vehicles that go through this terminal than any other. And so we're trying to look at that and look at how we make these investments around connectivity to the King County bus stop, for example, or rideshare, or other ways that we can get folks through Fauntleroy without using a vehicle. And so kind of what are our next steps? Well, so we've developed this purpose and needs statement, and it's available. It's certainly Hadley can provide it to this group. We then are now kind of in this screening criteria where we're developing what types of screening of the alternatives we want to use. And some examples here are described in these bullets. Does the concept fulfill one or more elements of the Pell purpose and need? For example, does it meet the operational goals for the facility? Setting, we have these goals, how can we set criteria around those goals? So that's part of this first level of screening. And then from there, we can develop if there's any particular alternatives that have fatal flaws that don't fit within the purpose and need. And so that's kind of the step that we're at right now. We're getting ready to begin some of those conversations with the community advisory groups next month, or excuse me, in March, getting ahead of myself. We also have a technical advisory group. Chris Arkles is on this call. He's a participant in that, and his organization participates in that. And the technical advisory group is really comprised of a bunch of engineers or people that want to be engineers. Everybody's a traffic expert, and as well as our tribal and environmental experts with both, for example, the county, the city, Kitsap Transit, all those technical folks come together. And so they participate in what we call the TAG. And then the community advisory group is made up of over 20 folks from the different routes, the Port Orchard Southworth area, of course, Vashon Island, and then Fauntleroy. So those are our two principal advisory groups. And then on top of that, we have an executive advisory group as well, which is comprised of executives from the various agencies, as well as some elected officials. So these groups are helping to shape and inform Washington State Ferries on a preferred alternative. And we're excited that this part of the project is really getting underway now. And there'll be a lot going on in the coming months and years as we kind of craft this Pell process final report. So I will save questions for later. I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, who's going to give an update on our service at Ferries.
Hello, thanks, Dave. Nice job.
Okay.
My name is Nicole McIntosh. As mentioned earlier, I'm the Chief of Staff at Washington State Ferries. Just wanted to quickly go over some of our service issues that we're having. This graph shows our ridership over the last 3 years. The blue line represents 2019 ridership. Then in 2020, the green line, you can see the dramatic decrease in ridership between March and April when the pandemic started and Stay Home, Stay Healthy initiative began. The red line of 2021 shows how ridership was steadily increasing really until late summer, and the effects of our reduced service started kicking in. So while demand did increase in 2021, our ridership is still, as you can see, significantly less than 2019 pre-pandemic levels. So as an example, last week we carried 58% of 2019's total ridership, 69% of 2019's vehicles, and 36% of the walk-ons. Since the pandemic started, we continue to carry more vehicles than passengers, which is the first time this has happened since 1951 that we've carried more vehicles than passengers. Earlier, we got a question from you all about whether Kitsap Foot Ferry was reducing the Fauntleroy vehicle traffic. And, what I can say is that we just don't have enough data yet. We're looking forward to looking into it more detailed, a ridership analysis between the two interplay. But because of our ridership numbers and walk-ons, riders in particular remain really low. A lot of people in downtown Seattle are working from home, so it's too early to get a meaningful trend. But we look forward to seeing if that is in fact working as ridership does crawl back up. Now this is specifically on the Triangle route, so we can compare it to the overall system. So the total ridership is down about 20% compared to 2019. So this takes into account the difference in the number of sailings with walk-ons. down much more, 50%, than vehicles, which are only down by 12%. Total ridership on the triangle this winter is up 14% compared to the same 3 weeks in 2021, again, taking into account the difference in the number of sailings that we're providing. On this alternate service that we are providing, we're offering about 3/4 of the sailings that we had in winter of 2019, normal service. Now, talking about our on-time performance for the triangle, we're at 95% so far in January. So that's up from October, November, and December of last year. So that's good. The current triangle on-time performance is down compared to January of 2019, which we were at 97% there. In 2020, January, we were at 98%, and January of 2021, we were back down to 95%. So our on-time performance for the triangle in this last December was 86%. So we're getting better. And what we find, I think, is when we have fewer sailings, our vessel crews are taking more time loading vessels, trying to cram as many vehicles as we can onto those boats. So it takes a bit more time. The triangle does experience the most lateness on the #1 sailings in the peak afternoon commute on weekdays. Next slide. The 4 pillars of service you have here. The pandemic really forced us to operate more fluidly. The 4 pillars approach to providing service instead of our usual seasonal approach. So as shown on the screen, the pillars are ridership, vessels, crewing, and budget. Early in the pandemic, as I showed earlier, the ridership pillar all but disappeared. We have since seen that start to return. The vessels pillar has always been at risk. We have an aging small fleet. We used to have 24 vessels in the fleet, and we're down to 21 right now. So that does make it challenging to cover our core service, because at all times, ferries do have to be out for maintenance and repairs. Certain ferries have to be out. More recently, COVID-19 and the global shortage of qualified mariners has made the crewing pillar the most vulnerable. Pre-COVID, our 2040 long-range plan did identify an aging and rapidly retiring workforce as a risk to service. And unfortunately, the pandemic has really accelerated this trend. We have quarantines, illnesses. People are retiring early, they want to get out. And we're seeing highly trained, skilled staff leave the agency. Next slide. There we go. Since October 16th, we have been operating on an alternative service plan, as I mentioned. This means it's a reduced capacity across the system. The purpose is really to provide reliability and predictability for our customers. If we look at the first part of October, we canceled 341 trips due to lack of crew. And from the middle of October to the end of November, after we implemented the alternative service plan, we only missed 45 sailings due to crew-related cancellations. So that's really helping out with predictability for our customers. And just to give a reference, in the time period where we missed those 45 sailings, we completed over 15,000. So it's a very small amount. Our plan does call for us to prioritize the core service with our crews, but add on sailings when crews are available on a day-to-day basis. Since the beginning of the alternate service plan in October, we have added the 4th vessel to the San Juan Islands. So removing 1 vessel from each route, it reduces the number of crew needed to supply the service. But we do have 2 vessels on the triangle route. So we reduce 1 vessel from every route that has more than 1 vessel. But really where it helps out is that we don't have to crew the vessels, and we don't have to replace those crews when they're on vacation or sick or out due to COVID. So we are working on a plan to restore service to the pre-pandemic levels, but it's going to be a slow process. And we will roll out that plan within the next month or so. That's what I have. Any questions?
Right, I see one question getting dropped there in the chat already. So Kate will be monitoring the chat there for folks. If you want to drop questions there, she can read them, or you know, we might call on you to ask your question and help clarify things.
So we'll start with this one. Given that crewing and not boats is the critical resource right now, why is the SIALP on FVS now, or why is the SIALP on Fauntleroy, I can't say it, Fauntleroy Vashon Southworth now instead of a bigger boat? It seems like using the SIALP exacerbates the reductions of a 2-boat schedule.
Sure. Well, so vessels aren't, vessels are still part of our problem. We only, as I mentioned, we only have 21 vessels, and we have several out on maintenance. The Wenatchee back in April was out since last April because we had a fire in the engine room. So we really don't have all the vessels we need right now. The Stealth is a vessel that we do take around to replace vessels as they're in maintenance time period. So yeah, ideally, at some point we will adjust the vessels on the Fauntleroy Vashon Southworth Triangle, but right now that's kind of what we have left.
What are the differences in number of vehicles they can carry? Just curious.
Oh. Yeah, no, I still don't know my vessels very well. I came from terminals.
The Stealth is 90 and the Issaquah class, the other ones usually run there 124. So it's about a 34 car difference per sailing.
Okay. Okay. All right, next one. Oh, wait, there we go. Regarding crewing, how is the progress towards coming out? I am not reading well tonight. Sorry, everybody. Regarding crewing, how is the progress toward coming out of the TFN alternative schedule? Is there hope of a 3-boat triangle route schedule by spring, summer?
So I mentioned that we're currently going through a service restoration plan, identifying what are the key metrics that we can add service, when we can reach those key metrics, and our plan for rollout. I do say that, so it's not finalized. I do say that of the routes that are still on alternative service plan, the triangle is the second to the bottom for getting that boat restored. So it's not going to be anytime soon.
And how soon do you expect to have all the vessels you want?
20.
I guess back up to the 24 maybe?
So first off, I mean, we have our 2040 long range plan identified a funding plan to get us to where we would have the right amount of vessels and replace them on the right schedule. What we need is funding to support that plan. So, but again, it will be a long process as well.
Okay. I'm at the end of the questions in the chat. Oh,
I'll
Victoria,
jump in
you wanna
here
follow?
and save Kate the trouble of reading my question.
Actually, I think Victoria might have had a follow-up
I
on
do.
that.
Oh, good.
Okay.
All right.
So I appreciate that you're talking about your 2040, goals, but could you be a little more specific? Are we 10, 15, 20 years out before we have all of the boats we need?
Oh, well, so as we go further along in time, we have more vessels that are ready to retire. So right now, we have a vessel that is 60 years old right now. And so it's going to take a while to catch up. And it really depends on how quickly the legislature and the governor can give us the funding to replace those vessels. So I can't, yeah.
So we don't have any currently in being built, is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay,
In pre-planning design right now.
okay.
And that's what I was going to
I'll
follow
add
up a little
the-
bit on, is sort of, do you have a sense, or are you able to share where, where do you guys think Ferries is sort of placed right now politically? I know Governor Inslee is looking at pushing, helping to push a pretty significant transportation, budget spend down in Olympia out of the legislature, as well as we'll be talking at our next month's meeting a lot about the federal infrastructure bill. Do you guys see monies coming either from the state or the federal level that will help you plan and pay for constructing the new boats, or are you really sort of hunting around for revenue right now?
Well, we're always hunting for revenue, but what I can say is, unfortunately, this pandemic time and the problems we've been experiencing for the last 2 years has really shed a light on the needs of the ferry system, and the fact that we have been asking and in desperate need for funding for quite some time. So the governor, you're exactly right. The governor put in quite a bit of money for new vessels, for preservation, and for help for our deficiencies. We've been the legislature, the ferry caucus has been very engaged. Your legislators are really working hard to convince their counterparts in the legislature that the ferry system does indeed need some funding to get ourselves back in line. So I feel a lot better than I have in the past, in terms of, it seems like people do understand that we do need some funding.
Yeah, so the message that was given recently by Roger Millar, who's our Secretary of Transportation, spoke to the second and third bullets here specifically, which is we're going to build a second hybrid electric ferry. We're currently building one right now. This is, these vessels will work in our newly electrified terminal system, and then retrofit a second Jumbo Mark II, which is not adding a new boat, it's just converting an existing boat to electric. So there is money in that budget. There are monies coming in from the federal government, but the investments for these boats are pretty significant, and they're expensive to build. And so that's the big challenge, is trying to find the money to really launch these new builds.
What I'm sharing now, and I kind of caught you off guard, Nicole, is a slide we shared in our latest round of public meetings that we had last month. That shows this is the items that are in the governor's proposed budget for Washington State Ferries. So you can see this is what we'll be seeing if the legislature chooses to fund these items, but this is the funding that's proposed by the governor.
Just
So quick.
as a ballpark, how long does it take from the time you submit a plan to build a ferry to get it into, service? What time period are we talking about roughly?
7 to 10 years.
Okay.
Jeremy, you've got your hand up.
So it often seems the case that one division of a government isn't talking to another. How much does fleet projection and terminals communicate? So I know that the Fauntleroy ferry dock is considered to be small right now, but if fleet management is looking at new vessels that are even bigger than Fauntleroy is designing for right now, is Fauntleroy actually taking that into account?
Well, I'll try to tackle that one. Our plan, and again, this is looking at the 2040 long-range plan, was that this route is going to continue to be served by 124 car vessels. That's the Issaquah class that you have out there today, except for the south. That's the plan going forward, that the vessel, even the new vessels that come on board, the hybrid electrics, when we eventually get to those, and that's probably 10 years out, will also be 124 car vessels. So the thinking is that, and I will try to assure you that the fleet does talk to terminals. I have a close relationship with my counterparts in both vessel engineering and operations. So we're talking about it, but we're building this program off of what was developed in that 2040 long range plan. If you look at that closely, there is no change in the vessel size, at least for the next 30 years.
Okay, I thought when the slide was just up, it said that the electric was a 144, not a 120.
Yeah, so those boats are what serve Bremerton. The 144s serve Bremerton. They also serve the San Juans. They're interchangeable at Mukilteo Clinton. Yeah, all of the routes are just all a little bit different in terms of vessel class. And so those boats will displace old retired, like the Yakima, 60 years old. They'll replace that. That will provide us some, like Nicole said, we're just balancing what's going out of service with the new boats that are coming in. Only with additional funds like the governor's proposed here can we actually increase the number of vessels. Does that make sense, Jeremy?
Yeah, just when one of the points of why we're replacing a terminal comes up as it's too small for the vessels that serve it, it's just asking the future question of, are vessels going to get bigger before the dock even finishes getting built? So
no, we're a facility for like a 75-year design life. So we're looking at the fleet. We're looking at what's trying to make predictions as to what the world will look like in 75 years and have a structure that is still functioning and useful and provide that. So
just dropped in the chat the link to our 2040 long range plan. So anyone who's interested in sort of reading more about this, you can search by route in that plan and sort of see what the recommendations are for the triangle route and what vessels are planned to serve the route.
I've got another question from the chat. What are other ferry systems like Alaska State experiencing with their pillars conditions?
Well, what I can say is that it's the shortage of the maritime workforce is global. So our partners here in King County Water Taxi, as well as Kitsap Transit, fast ferries, they're experiencing crewing challenges as well, having a hard time keeping up with the service. So it's pretty prevalent.
Okay, thanks. I'm at the end of the questions, Michael.
All right. Last chance, anybody? We've got a couple minutes. We could either let our guests slip out a little bit early or last moment to get in your questions. I know
Deb has one.
Oh, there you go.
I'm trying to unmute myself and I think I figured it out. Shift Command A. Oh my God. Deb Barker here, and you spoke regionally or locally, this state. Do you guys ever talk, does ferries talk with other ferry districts, state ferry districts about their situations with, my question was about, you guys talked about your 4 pillars. Is it only Washington State that's having this problem, or is, and John threw in that Alaska Marine Highway is in a world of hurt? Is this a national issue? Is it a worldwide issue? I'm just trying to get a handle on that.
Yeah, it's a national issue. From my understanding, the baby boomers, if you will, are getting out of the industry, and we just simply don't have enough people that are attracted back into our current industry. We have several working groups right now with the maritime academies in the area, as well as the members of the legislature, to see what we can do as a group to attract people that we otherwise wouldn't think about maritime as a career.
Are there
Yeah.
Are there places in Europe or other that do it better, that don't have this problem?
Well, That's a great question. I'm sure there's places that do it better than we do. But what I could say, you know, we're improving. So we're getting there in the local, like I say, the partnerships that we're establishing to really reduce the barriers. Also, it's, you know, you have to have $120 to get a TWIC card before we even consider you to come work for ferries. So that could be a barrier for many people to shell out $120 before you have a job and not even ensure that you're going to have a job. So are there programs that we can put in place to help those folks get those credentials so they don't have to shell it out themselves? Really targeting our recruiting in underserved areas, like I say, in places where you know, they don't know about all the opportunities that the Washington State Ferries offer.
Okay.
And Deb, we do coordinate with the international ferry systems quite regularly. Patty Ribstello, the head of Washington State Ferries, is on the board of an organization called Interferry, which is the International Ferry Group. And we're actually hosting their international conference in Seattle in September. So they're coming here to learn from us. And Washington State Ferries is the largest in the country. So I think, Nicole, you can correct me, a lot of other smaller ferry systems look at what Washington State Ferries is doing for guidance.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, that's good to hear that that they're coming here to see. And gosh, I hope the numbers get better by September for us. Thank you.
All righty. We're at 7:25, but why don't we give a virtual round of applause to our guests. Thank them for taking some time out of their evening. Luckily, you don't have to jump in traffic and make your way across the bridge to get home. But thank you, as always, for joining us.
Well, thank you for having us, and we're happy to come back anytime. And as we mentioned, we'll be having our next advisory group meetings in March. So John and Victoria, you'll be hearing from me within a couple days with the dates of those meetings. And those meetings are open to everybody, and the links are always posted on our website. So anyone else who wants to follow along is welcome to join those meetings on Zoom.
All right.
Thank you.
I am going to take our ad moment, as I always like to say. But before we move on to our next guest here, our frequent guests, Sound Transit, sent along this slide to share with everyone. I'm imagining everyone is aware, but just in case you've been distracted by COVID or the latest Netflix streaming show, the West Seattle and Ballard Link extensions draft environmental impact statement is out. In fact, they even got it out a couple of days early, but the official release date is actually tomorrow. So as far as I'm aware, and their slide would seem to confirm this, they are doing a 90-day comment period, but the 90-day comment period starts tomorrow on the official release date. And so that will run from January 28th to April 28th. And there will be all sorts of opportunities to learn more and make comments. You can go to their evergreen online open house site, which gets updated whenever they've got new information. So that continues to be wsblink.participate.online. Their community advisory groups continue to meet. And so they invite folks to tune in on February 8th to hear the next West Seattle-Duwamish Community Advisory Group meeting online. Deb Barker, who's one of our board members, who stepped away from it. But Deb, tag you here for a moment. Do you have anything to share about what we might look for coming up at that meeting?
It's going to be an interesting meeting. I think there'll be lots of questions. And sorry, I've got a cat going berserk behind me, so I'm cracking up. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting meeting with lots of questions, and people may have a lot of assumptions or think decisions are made already, but it's there's no decisions. Everyone needs to remember that it's the Sound Transit Board that makes the final decisions. So this is all just information to lead up to the board making the routing decisions. Fine. Thanks.
All right, thank you. As you can see here on the slide, there are a number of draft EIS meetings, big, large public ones, as well as they'll be doing small community meetings, but they're planning 4 virtual meetings and 1 in person in March. They invite folks to join on March 30th virtually for a meeting that will have a specific West Seattle focus. Again, you can learn more about all the ways to engage and comment during the draft EIS comment period by visiting their website at wsblink.participate.online. And we will talk a little bit more at the end of the meeting about how you can learn more about commenting on the EIS. But without further ado, I'm going to move us along to one of our longtime friends of the coalition, Chris Arkles, who's a transportation policy advisor with King County, who is joining us to have just a brief casual conversation with King County Metro. I didn't check, Chris, did you have any slides or anything that you wanted to share tonight, or are we just chatting?
No, I was kind of a late fill in for the agenda. So I don't have any fancy PowerPoint like my good friends at WSF or I can touch on a few things, and then I think we can just open it up to questions about the system and where we're at, if that's okay.
Yep, sounds great.
Great. First thing I wanted to mention, because it's always on all of our minds in West Seattle, is what Metro's plans are in the future as the High Bridge reopens, hopefully in July. We are planning on returning to the High Bridge for our service. Generally, the Low Bridge has served us well during this period. We've had great cooperation from SDOT on transit priority improvements on the Low Bridge. But ultimately still, especially with Terminal 5 opening, the High Bridge is going to continue to be a much better option for our buses. And so we are planning in early July, or whenever the bridge is supposed to reopen, on returning our service to the High Bridge. That's in between our service changes. So if you're a person who looks at schedules, you may find them a little off at that time, because the schedules will be made with Low Bridge timing, and we will have some High Bridge timing. So that might be a little bit of an issue, but for most people who are app-based and use One Bus Away and other things, they'll still have current schedule information. And for most of our buses coming out of West Seattle, certainly the bigger ones like the C Line and the 120, the service is so frequent that shouldn't affect it much. Wanted to give you a brief update on the H Line. Like Sound Transit and WashDOT and everybody else, we are suffering from the effects of the concrete strike. If you've been on M-Bomb or in White Center recently, you might have seen that we still have a lot of streets dug up for H-line construction there, notably on the S-curves in Burien and on 15th Avenue in White Center. Regrettably, we're at a little bit of a pause because you can't move forward with a lot of things for concrete. We don't expect it to affect the critical path for the H-line opening in 2022 later on this fall, but we may have to open it with less than all of the elements finished if the strike drags on. So, but the plan is to keep moving forward on that. And then one last thing I wanted to touch on is policy updates and what we have seen during the pandemic. One of the things that became readily apparent to us was that choice ridership dropped off very quickly, but the people who work in jobs in construction or medicine, or even the people who serve you at service establishments like your local restaurants and stuff, had to get to work. And so we found that working class people had to get to work. Our ridership declines in South King County in particular were far less dramatic than they were in more well-to-do neighborhoods where people had the choice to work from home. So that has caused us to pass a series of policy updates to the King County Council that strengthen the case for equity and social justice and in how we allocate our routes. And so with that, and we're going to be working in 2022 to actually implement that general policy direction that the King County Council approved. So I will stop with that and just take any questions you have.
All right, we've already got one in the chat. We appreciate the restoration of weekday service on Route 22. When should we expect weekend service on Route 22 to be restored?
Well, it's a challenging situation. I used to live on the 22 in my house on Gatewood Hill on Ida Street, rolled by my house every half an hour. And I appreciate that it's an important bus for coverage and service in Arbor Heights. I have many friends who work there. I will say it is one of the least productive routes in the metro system and certainly in Seattle. And so it is a challenge to find the right mix. We do have budget limitations and we continually have to balance the desire to carry the most people to the most places most of the time. So it's a little bit of a challenge. Midday ridership along the 22 is not super strong, but we would love to be able to return weekend service. It's also a joint decision. The city of Seattle purchased a lot of service from Metro, so that would have to also be a priority for them in the city. And, in general, we will be working in the coming years to look at possibly going out with a regional funding measure to make transit service more robust.
So, Chris, is that basically saying we don't have any idea when it's going to be back to a Saturday schedule?
We don't, it's basically saying we don't currently have the funding to restore it to a Saturday schedule.
Okay.
We were glad to be able to do it on weekdays, but currently we don't have the funding. Just balancing a lot of things.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Victoria?
Chris, there's still a problem with the reader boards not accurately reflecting when the next bus will come. Is Metro working on that? That's been going on for a number of years now, so I didn't know where they were at with fixing that.
I am not, I know that they're, as a bus rider, I know that they're sometimes spotty and we are working on updating reader boards throughout the system. I don't know specifically what problem you're referring to, but I can ask about that.
Well, for example, I was on the bus, went by Morgan Junction. They said the next bus would be 27 minutes, which is rapid ride, so it should never be 27 minutes. Got down to the Fauntleroy dock where I get off and it said it was 15 minutes, and then suddenly it changed to 2 minutes, and then it rolled back forward the next refresh to 10 minutes. And I'm sitting here on the bus, so I just want to share that with you because it's been a problem.
We're one of the things I will say in general about Metro is we have politically made the decision along with the King County Council to prioritize keeping service on the street due to the really strong demand we were seeing in Seattle. And so we have fell a little bit behind on some of the technology. So one of the things we want to do is make sure we catch up on that technology. For example, not all buses are fitted with GPS. So some of the real-time information we get is from little readers on top of some of the light poles that you see. And some of it's from actual GPS information from the buses. But I'll ask where we're at.
Okay.
reasonable accuracy, but you know, I agree it's a great thing to have.
So I'm curious, you said there
Oh,
might
yeah.
be a little time balancing the timing of the buses when they go to the high bridge, like they were on low bridge timing and you have to readjust for high bridge timing for the routes. What's the difference? Are the low bridge times longer because of potential openings?
You know, the low bridge has been, I don't know, we don't know until we actually start operating the buses.
Okay.
I just want to say it's a caution that we might get caught in between those two cycles, and so they might not be as reliable on the timing after July until the September service change when the schedules are posted with, you know. So we run a very complex bus system with over 2,000 buses. We've got to plan breaks for drivers. We've got to plan pickup spots when people need to expect a schedule. And it's all very complicated. Generally, during this tragic time where our bridge has been taken from us, bridge time buses have been running pretty well, both due to SDOT's transit priority on the approaches to the low-level bridge, and to the fact that, you know, there was not as many cars on the streets, you know, during a pandemic. I will say that in general, it looks like to all of us that automobile traffic is bouncing back a little bit faster than transit ridership right now. So, so definitely we're going to want to be back on that dedicated high bridge where we have great transit priority.
And you expect the same bus lanes on the high bridge that were there before?
SDOT is rebuilding the bridge to have full, Deb can confirm this, is to have the same full operability. They're not planning on reopening the bridge with any restrictions on trucks or buses or any major change to the operations. They're planning on the same bus lane configuration and everything that they had before.
Okay, thank you. Deb?
We'll still have those same pinch points to loop onto northbound 99.
Yep. Some problems you can solve and other problems you need to throw $250 million at.
Yeah, I have a question as we speak of $250 million. The last weather of last month, I heard that lots of routes were canceled, and of course I subscribe to the Metro and I get my Metro alerts and I get my Sea Line updates. It's like, wow, how many buses are actually running today? So I almost feel like I'm asking a deja vu question to you, Chris, because didn't we talk about how does Metro get the word out about bus routes that are canceled 3 years ago at a big storm? And so that's again my question. Can you talk about how Metro gets the word out about where the heck a snow route is, and is there a bus that's actually going to drive on the snow route?
Well, first you should always sign up for a rider alert for any bus route that you sign up for, because you will get a text notification that that bus has been suspended during snow. The other thing I would say is Metro also has a dedicated snow page that and which I don't happen to have the URL with me right away, but you can go there for any information on all bus routes, and it'll have a list of each bus route and where they're at, whether they're on a snow route or whether service has simply been suspended on those routes. And we do try and work with our partners at places like the West Seattle blog and in the media through blog updates and press releases to let them know where we're at. Generally what happens, if snow happens in one area of the county, say Woodinville and Redmond, that's fine. If it happens, countywide, that is a big struggle, and so we tend to have to go to we have different levels of emergency snow networks, and we made after a big storm several years ago, we made an agreement with SDOT and the departments of transportation in all cities around King County prioritize those urgent snow routes for plowing whenever there's a storm. So, in the case of the, West Seattle, we're going to make sure that, the core buses coming out of West Seattle, the 120, the C line, and major transit corridors are plowed first. And so we try and keep as much service on the street, but it's a challenge chaining up 2,000 buses overnight and getting them back on the street. But we really do have a successful partnership with cities in trying to make sure those transit corridors are plowed first, and we can keep at least core service on the street. You may have to walk a mile to get to a bus, but there should be something running, for most people.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, hi, Chris. Question for you, kind of a long-running issue we've had. We find we're often in kind of just a roundabout conversation, where Metro talks about, ridership or the performance of routes. We say, hey, we would love to get involved in planning better routes or think about how they could better serve the needs of people in West Seattle today. We get told, well, that's a big, long process. It takes like 2 years to plan a route. And then we say, great, we'd love to be involved. And then it just kind of goes around and around in a circle. What do we need to do to get with some Metro planners to sort of start the process? And we totally get, great, it'll take 2 years. How do we start chatting with or submitting ideas to or brainstorming with some, we'd love to have planners come out maybe to a meeting this year and talk through some of these ideas. What do they look through? What do they look for in evaluating existing routes or launching a new route?
Well, I think we'd be happy to come out and present on our service planning process. I would just say, I believe, and several people believe within Metro that it is probably time to take a look at the service network in West Seattle, which really hasn't been touched much since the implementation of the C line. But that said, we are also an agency that has a limited number of planners, a limited number of people who have, evenings and children and places to go. And currently we are doing 2 big restructure processes. One on the east side, which is probably the largest restructure process we've ever done, with the coming of Eastlink to light rail to the east side. Light rail to the east side. And the other one we're just kicking off, which is Linwood Link, which is the extension of light rail past Northgate to Shoreline and eventually to Linwood. And over the next 2-3 years, until I retire, we have a series of light rail openings. And so it's going to be a lot of attention to all those restructures. We also are deeply embedded right now currently with ST and planning for ST3 stations, including the 3 stations in West Seattle. So we do have, we only have so much bandwidth. I am continue to advocate, and I think in answer to your question, you should continue to advocate for a fresh look at service in West Seattle. And if we are able to do that systematically as an organization, then I think certainly your input would be welcome. We're always looking to continuously improve our system, but a major service restructure deserves a robust public process, deserves a lot of research and work by our service planners. So it's not something we can just say we're going to do, casually. We need to actually plan it and build it into our work plan. So keep advocating for that. I do believe it's time for a fresh look. There certainly will be a fresh look when light rail comes to West Seattle, because we will totally change a lot of our service, but that's a decade away. So it probably is time to look at look at our service network. I think we do a good job of carrying people around West Seattle for the most part, but there's always room for improvement.
All righty, thank you.
Ooh, look at that question, Chris.
What changes to West Seattle routes would you like to see?
Well, gosh, that's a tough question. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't
Go
know.
for it, Chris. We know that you have these ideas, and you just tell us. Come on.
I'm a mad transit scientist. No, I will tell you one of the changes I'm most excited about is I love 15-minute frequency on the 50. I love that bus because it's the only bus that touches Delridge, Alki, Admiral, the Junction, and the Soto Light Rail Station. And I find it incredibly useful and just a great bus. So I am super excited about the recent 15-minute frequency on the 50. We're always looking to improve routes. Anytime we can get more signal transit priority. We recently got a lot more red paint denoting bus lanes on Alaska and other to help the C line move through the junction. The deviation in the junction continues to be an issue. The fact that we have to go around the block for the true value is probably about a 3 to 5 minute penalty that we'd love to try and solve, but it's a very complicated issue involving parking and merchants at the junction. But that is something that we continue to struggle with, is that deviation. I think we need to do a better job in Admiral, especially with midday service. Admiral has seen a lot more multifamily growth in the last few years, and I think we're a little bit behind in how we're treating Admiral. I also want to see us do a better job of serving Alki. I'm sad that the 37 has been suspended. It was never been a particularly strong ridership route. People go, well, why is the ridership not strong on the 37? I'm like, see all that water out there? No riders. See that big hill behind Alki? No riders. And so it's a tough place to serve. But I think we can do a better job of integrating our service and the shuttle and providing service on Alki. So those are some areas that, that I would love to see improvements.
Okay.
Victoria.
So Chris, a couple things. You said we should push to get more involved, advocate better. Aren't we advocating to you? Or is there somebody else that we should approach to say we want to have more input into route design? I'm just not sure how that works.
I will certainly take the message back that you would
Okay.
see a more robust restructure in West Seattle. But I'm just a little guy in a big organization. And really, if you want to move things, you need to appeal to elected officials, your King County Council,
Okay.
member, your city council member and others, and say you want to see a more robust transit. Look, I'm interested to hear what you think the weaknesses are in our system out here.
Okay. The other thing I want to ask you about, I went through the draft DEIS for the ST3 for West Seattle line, and they only mentioned the C line and the H line as bringing people to light rail stations, but that leaves a significant portion of West Seattle residents with no direct access to light rail. Is that a conversation that's going on right now, and will more routes?
Yeah, I haven't digested the entire 8 million pages of the DEIS yet, but I do know from planning meetings, that certainly at the Delridge station, the H line is very important in terms of serving that, as is the 125 up on the hill there. Delridge is kind of its own transit shed to speak of. At the Avalon station, certainly the 21 Express, all those buses would serve that station. Most of the other buses in West Seattle would tie in at the Alaska Junction station.
But they don't run frequently, and you don't have nothing around, like you say, the 37 not running has left a vast corridor of residents without access to a light rail. And I'm just curious how much more conversation is going on.
I don't know that it's realistic to expect everyone from every neighborhood in West Seattle to have fabulous access to light rail. If you live on Beach Drive, maybe that's, going to be a challenge for you,
Well, there won't be, I mean, you're not putting in park and ride, so there is no access to the light rail. And
Well-
Admiral, like you pointed out, and up at Arbor Heights, they all are left out of the equation, just on the surface today. So I was
A
just
proposal
curious.
in the long range plan for
Yeah,
Metro Connects is that the H line, because it would no longer go downtown, would continue past the Delridge station, and it would go to Admiral and Alki, providing those folks with a rapid ride link
oh, okay.
to light rail. But I'm just being realistic, saying all neighborhoods might not have a direct bus to light rail, but we are confident. That's one of the main goals of these restructures that we do countywide is if we don't have to send, I think we send about 900 buses a day out of West Seattle to downtown. If we don't have to send 900 buses from 35th and Avalon to downtown where they're going to pick up no riders along the way, we save an enormous amount of dollars in running time to run those buses. And
Okay.
transferring a lot of those buses, not all, we'd probably still have underlining bus service to light rail and terminating that buses. That allows us to increase frequency and coverage within West Seattle.
Okay.
So that's kind of the vision, and that's what we're doing. When we did the restructure around ULink in a few years ago, when the stations opened on Capitol Hill and in Husky Stadium, we were able to get 3 times as many more people within 6 minutes of frequent bus or 15-minute bus service. So that's the goal, is to try and increase that coverage and frequency in your neighborhoods by redirecting those hours that we no longer need to spend because we've got that light rail connection.
Okay.
I feel compelled to point out that that's not a comforting promise with the King County Council's change on equity guidelines for Metro. Not that going after equity is a bad thing, but that certainly hit Northeast Seattle really hard when they were promised support light rail will come here, use light rail, and when it comes, we will restructure the bus service and you will have faster, more frequent service to get you to the light rail stations. And then what happened was council came along and said, no, we've got to focus on equity. And so we took a whole bunch of those bus hours from Northeast Seattle and tossed them towards Southeast Seattle and South King County. And so there's a whole lot of areas around there who didn't see any increase to service. And now they have difficulty getting over to, now instead of having buses that take them downtown, they have poor service to get them to the light rail to go downtown.
Well, I don't know who you've been listening to, Michael, but I wholly disagree with your characterization of the North Link restructure. And I would say a couple things. First, West Seattle has plenty of areas that score well in the equity scores, including your neighborhood. Secondly, I would say that, the main question about the Northeast restructure was what to do with the hours associated with the 41, which was a very frequent, very expensive, huge investment bus that specifically went from the Northgate Park and Ride to to downtown Seattle. Didn't stop in any neighborhoods, didn't serve anybody else except for people going from that Park and Ride to downtown. incredibly valuable bus for many years. I think it's a defensible policy question that we didn't take all those hours from the 41 and reallocate them in Northeast Seattle. We have a lot of people throughout the county who need service. We are a countywide agency. We kept all the hours for North Seattle in there, except for a portion of those 41 hours. And I will defend that, all day long. We've got to serve the entire county. And if you feel like West Seattle's getting screwed because Metro's prioritizing equity, I don't think it's the case.
I am simply pointing out arguments that their own King County Council member made to his colleagues about promises Metro made to his constituents and then changed in favor of other priorities. I don't disagree that those are good priorities, but that doesn't change the reality that there was a bait and switch that happened
There was not a
between
bait and
Metro
switch.
and Sound Transit.
There was not a bait and switch. Disagree with the council member's characterization. I think he's a fine man, but I disagree with that characterization. And I think we made a policy decision. I think it's a defensible policy position. 8 out of the 9 council members thought it was a good move. I think it's a good move.
All right, John's got a question in the chat. We frequently hear from our friends in Admiral lamenting the lack of off-peak service downtown. Are 15-minute headways on the 50 going to be enough to convince riders to tolerate a 2-seat ride downtown? And as somebody who, my bus is the 50, and I can tell you it takes a lot longer to get downtown versus the 56.
So, Admiral, we do have good peak hour service. You can get directly downtown. 56, 57, other buses. The 15-minute frequency, frankly, 2-seat rides are more the future of our transit system, especially as we expand light rail throughout this system. The reason 2-seat rides are bad is because of the transfer penalty between those rides. When you're in New York City and you're riding the subway, you don't go, oh my gosh, I got to transfer 2 trains to get someplace, because that the services are frequent, the transfers are easy, and so 2-seat rides are probably going to become more prevalent as we integrate with light rail. John, I see John put a clarification note in there. But I think the frequency of the 50 is attractive to me. I personally don't mind a 2-seat ride. I get off at the Soto station a lot of times with Michael Taylor Judd, and we both walk over and wait for the train and catch up with each other. So I do think we need to revisit Admiral service but it's based on productivity. Frankly, when we laid out this service network, that we have today, there was not a lot of midday ridership from Admiral, but I would posit that Admiral has changed in that time. And I don't know what else to say on that question, other than what was John's clarification?
I was thinking more 50 transferring to the C versus 50 all the way downtown. I think I got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people do take 50 to the junction and transfer to the C line to go downtown, especially if they work in the middle or north end of downtown. That's going to be a better transfer for them. Some other people take the 50 to the Soto station like Michael and I do and transfer there. That's one of the things I love about the 50 is you can transfer to so many different buses and so many different destinations. And it's the only bus I know where, I can go, I could go from Michael's house in North Delridge to, Cactus on Alki by bus, so that's pretty wonderful. So.
It is pretty wonderful.
It does take longer.
You can,
either way
more
you go,
importantly,
it takes longer.
you can have all the drinks you want at Cactus and then ride the bus back to North Delridge.
Exactly.
But speaking of our love for the 50, I know you got sort of tagged in last minute with details for this meeting, but do you think you can get back to us later? I know a number of board members are really curious. Are there any ridership numbers on, I mean, I guess it's hard with the pandemic, but you know, with the switch to sending some of those Route 50s doing a turn back at Soto and bouncing back to West Seattle instead of going all the way to the end of the line, and getting that increased frequency. Have we seen an improvement on ridership? I mean, is Metro seeing the numbers that we are hoping for so that they'll keep that going?
We don't have good firm numbers yet. Generally takes about 3 or 4 months to get good firm numbers. So we probably should be getting those pretty soon. I can tell you as a frequent 50 rider, the 50 is more and more full. The 50 is also a very popular bus for the Starbucks crowd and the Seattle School District's crowd. As Michael can attest, about half the bus gets off at First and Lander, and because the Starbucks employees definitely have figured out that's their bus, so we don't have good ridership numbers. I know some people have been in Southeast Seattle have been frustrated that all those added 50 trips don't go all the way over to serve Seward Park and Columbia City. But that was something financially we couldn't afford. And the West Seattle leg of the 50 has always been much stronger in terms of ridership.
Okay. For something completely different, when is Orca Next Generation supposed to hit?
I don't know the exact date, but it's, it's like opening a restaurant. You probably are going to start seeing some soft launch stuff this spring and throughout the year, and in 2023 you'll see more full implementation, replacement Orca cards. It's a huge undertaking with multiple agencies, including Washington State Ferries and others, and so it's not going to be a flip the switch moment, but I expect a soft launch in the spring.
Okay, great.
Well, believe it or not, we are already at 8:05. So big thank you to Chris for jumping in to cover some conversation with Metro and get us a few updates. But I want to make sure we have some time to chat about a few things and wrap up on time or a little bit before. So big virtual round of applause for Chris.
Thank you very much. And I will certainly take back your desire for a more full planning exercise in West Seattle. And always enjoy talking with you. And thank you very much. I'm going to say goodbye and miss the rest of the meeting.
That's all right.
All right.
I will tell you about it on the
There we go.
Thanks, Chris.
Deb, I'll see you at the West Seattle CAG meeting. Take care. Bye-bye.
Of course you will. Bye.
All righty. And for those of you watching on Facebook or later on the video and without access to the chat, we shared into the chat, and I've added it here at the bottom of the slide, King County Metro's Winter Snow Guide webpage. Unfortunately, it's not a nice, easy to remember short URL, but I'll let that sort of hold there on the screen for a few moments so folks watching video can pause and jot that down, and hopefully go check that out if they need to check out whether their bus route runs on the emergency snow network or what other routes nearby come through, what the snow route is, and sign up for alerts.
So Michael?
Yes.
I don't ride Metro during commuter hours. So how real time is the updates for like snow and ice? Are they fairly frequent?
It really depends.
Okay.
Kind of like Chris was sharing, that some of it is just the sort of long transition there with technology on the buses, and that's been kind of interrupted by all the pandemic and everything. But that same sort of thing happens when you go to snow routes. So as someone who said, who, for example, I'm typically on the 120, the 120 essentially runs its same exact route, whether there's snow or not. And a lot of those buses, in fact, they're already sort of getting ready for rapid ride on some, and they put that in on the route occasionally, the buses. So a lot of those buses, like, it's flat, they run, they don't get too impacted by snow and ice. One bus away will typically pick up the buses running even when they're on the emergency snow network. And so even though they're not on the regular schedule, you can see that one's on the way. The same may not be the case if you have a bus that's running on an entirely different route. Say I can't remember for certain if the 125 runs as part of the snow network, so I apologize. I don't think it does, but as an example of where you might have a nearby route that doesn't run because it's up on a hill, but they might run the bus on a snow route and run it down, like in this case, Delridge, or they do other things, like things that maybe don't normally run down 35th or don't normally run down other main arterials. Parts of a route may run around the arterial in order to avoid those tighter streets or the hills. And so when they do that, if either you'll see buses that don't normally turn up where you stand at your bus stop and you'll go, why is that number here? And it's because it's a GPS route and it pops up, or vice versa, something that normally gets picked up by those overhead monitors. If it's not running on its regular route, it no longer gets picked up. And so the bus is just kind of this ghost bus running through the snow network.
Was it last year or the year before when we had that real snow and ice for a few days? I think it was over a week. And I noticed that they changed the route. So they're at Fauntleroy in Alaska. And so I saw continually, I had to go by it several times, that people were waiting at the bus stop and the bus wasn't stopping there. It was going somewhere else. And these are regular commuters. So I didn't know if they have this last minute, oh my goodness, we can't turn left here because it's blocked or it's too icy until the street can be cleared. Do they get a real time, oh, by the way, you need to walk 2 blocks over?
You know, since I don't work for any transportation agencies, I feel comfortable saying that I think we do a really poor job across multiple agencies here in the region with communicating with riders when emergency things happen.
Okay.
As we've seen over the last several months with Sound Transit and the monorail and some other groups just not being great. But as a regular Metro rider, I find, you know, they're pretty good with their Twitter and text alerts. And, you know, that's not really universally accessible for lots of people, but that's something I would definitely say. If you're somebody who, you know, uses Twitter, if you're somebody who carries their cell phone around with them all the time, like, learn your emergency snow network on the website ahead of time and get signed up for those alerts, because they are pretty good about letting you know constantly if, you know, if staffing is a problem and they cut a route. They often put out those tweets pretty well. You know, they'll notify when a blockage has happened. Like, I can be sitting at work and I'll get text messages, you know, that, you know, this bus route is being routed off of 3rd Avenue at such and such stop. And so sometimes I'll be like at work and I'll be like, what the heck is going on downstairs on 3rd Avenue? Because I'm getting texts that the buses are being rerouted. And I'm like, so is this just like there's an ambulance there and they're trying to avoid the scene? Or is there like some major like incident that's going on down there? And so sometimes that's how I find out about major news things happening downtown, or a protest or something, is because all of a sudden I get all the rider alerts coming to me by text. So again, I certainly, like, you know, as folks who advocate for this, I don't think that's an acceptable sort of amount of communication, and there's a lot more that our transportation agencies could be doing. But again, if you are someone who has a cell phone or who follows, you know, Metro tweets, it's a pretty good way to get pretty up to the minute updates on what's going on.
Okay,
I think the big challenge is it sort of requires, so if folks opt in, like you said, at Twitter and whatnot, or use apps, they're going to stay in touch. The challenge is, how do you get word to people who haven't opted in, and
Yep.
or can't opt in.
right? How would you get word to people that that the routes changed? I think that's I conceptually, I don't know how you would do it. I guess theoretically you could drive around and
It is definitely a challenge. I think the struggle, so now kind of putting a little bit of a hat on as someone who works by day as an outreach professional for a government agency. I think one of the things we struggle with is, so looking at something like buses, the folks most likely to be using buses are older adults, people living with disabilities, people who, you're standing outside. So it's much easier, right, when we're driving a car and you're like, well, shoot, the street's closed. Okay, well, follow the detour sign, or I guess I will just, turn here and drive around and figure my way around the obstacle. And you have the ability to do that, the mobility to do that, and you're sitting inside a car that is presumably dry and semi-warm. But someone who's in a wheelchair, someone who's standing out in the snow or cold air, when you suddenly like, is my bus stop closed or not? Or is there a bus coming? And then you're trying to figure, do I trudge all the way back in the snow home? What are my options? That becomes a lot more difficult. And I think, it's incumbent on those of us who do those kinds of jobs to try and figure out how we go out of our way to better communicate with people.
The SDOT lets people who live on steep hills have the road closed due to snow signs. Metro could give people who live near the signs a hard plaque to hang on a sign, snow route, and has a printed map of what the snow route that's affiliated with that sign is. Like you can ask neighbors to do it. They'll do it. You just need to give them the hardware.
Yeah.
The other thing I ran into, and I've run into this a couple times speaking of protests, but cell service has been brought down because too many people were using their cell service. So during the Women's March that first year, there were so many participants all using their cell phone. And my girlfriend and I rode the bus downtown. Well, we didn't know what happened to our bus. We stood there for 45 minutes. And because there was no cell service, we weren't getting any notification of what was going on. So you're right, Michael, maybe that's something going forward Metro could take a look at and find alternate ways, maybe the reader boards or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. We are at 8:15 and we're quickly getting towards the end of the meeting here. Do we have any old business that I'm not thinking of? We had tracking the DEIS there for a while, but that's no longer old business. That's become new business again. Anything else? All right. Hearing nothing then. New business. We'll see if any of our guests manage to hang on to the end here, especially do we have Tracy here at least for the blog? That's good. So just a heads up for Tracy in particular with the West Seattle blog, as well as anybody who might be watching on Facebook or viewing the video later here after the meeting. We are looking to do some exciting meetings here in the next month or two. Coming up, our very next meeting on Thursday, February 24th, we are once again tentatively going to be joined by our local Congresswoman, Pramila Jayapal, who you may recall visited us earlier on in the pandemic. She's going to come back to do a little bit of follow-up conversation with us about the infrastructure bill and some of the federal funding things going on with that. We also look like we have finally secured Seattle City Council member Alex Peterson, who is District 4 for those not familiar, which is Northeast Seattle, but he is also the City Council's Transportation Committee Chair. So we've been trying to get him out to chat with us, and this seemed like a good time to have him chat, and hopefully we might be able to slip one or two more electeds in. I have an idea for someone else we might want to have to chat about infrastructure spending and budgets as well. So be sure to mark your calendars for that if infrastructure is something that you're interested in, and how we spend our dollars on transportation and transit in Seattle and at sort of the federal level. And then looking even further ahead, we are excited for our March meeting, Thursday, March 24th. We are going to host a draft, I guess I should have taken draft off there. It's actually an Environmental Impact Statement 101 workshop. We will be focused on Sound Transit's draft environmental impact statement in particular. And so do note you'll have about a month after that still to get your comments into them for the official comment period. But one of the things we've talked about for a while, knowing this was coming, is you know, there are a lot of folks out there who don't really understand what an environmental impact statement process is. Why does it happen? Most folks don't realize that it's a requirement for pretty much most large-scale projects that any government or agency or developer are doing. They have to go through this to meet various federal and state guidelines typically. So we want to talk a little bit about that, as well as sort of help people understand, like, what does an EIS look at and what doesn't it look at? And some people might think, well, I don't care about the details of that. But what we want to do is not just help our stakeholders understand like what this is and how it functions, but also we want you to be able to make comments that are going to be very relevant to this specific process. Because this, you know, meets federal and state and local policy guidelines, there are really defined rules about sort of like what has to be studied in an EIS, that comments have to be collected and responded to in a particular way. And so we want to make sure that if you really want to be heard by Sound Transit, if you really want to be heard by the other officials who are going to look at this, we want to make sure you understand sort of what is and isn't being looked at in this process, and perhaps how to word your comments better, or how to specifically call out the kinds of issues and concerns that an EIS look at, so that your comment is more likely to be prominently considered and more likely to be responded to in a specific and efficient way by the agency, and to be published then in the final EIS when it comes out later. So those are some of the things that we're looking at doing. We're locking down our facilitator now. It should be one of our old friends who folks may remember seeing before, but somebody who works in the transportation field and has some experience on this. We also are excited that Sound Transit has agreed to support the workshop as well. Don't quite know yet what that's going to look like, whether they will actually participate or whether they might just kind of be on the side to answer some questions, whether there might be an opportunity to take official comment in some way as part of the meeting. We're working out some of those details between now and March, but we are excited to say that this will be sort of an official community outreach meeting for them, and that they are supporting it. And so that should be helpful, because that means, if nothing else, we hopefully can have nice official maps and station plans to discuss, rather than us trying to, as much fun as we have building things with, you know, styrofoam or Legos or things like that. You know, it probably looks better if we can have some professional renderings that they're going out to their large public meetings with. So do mark your date and mark your calendars for that in March as well. Any questions or other new business for folks to bring up?
So, Michael, I have a question in preparation for the workshop. if someone has a question of, say they want to, there's, I think, 13,000 projected riders each day on the light rail in the draft environmental impact statement, but you want to know how they derive those numbers in preparation to studying their report. How does that work?
Can I jump in and say something?
Yes.
Yeah, you go,
Um,
Deb.
One of the things that Lita and I talked about, Lita at Sound Transit, how to get questions in advance. So what we'd probably like to do is in our February meeting, have folks, tell folks that, you know, get your questions to us now, whether it's on our website or whether you type them in chat. Just get your questions in now so we can get them over to Sound Transit and then they can have a response. Does that answer your question, Victoria?
Yeah, it does, because I just, you know, you look at some of these numbers like 4 billion and you think, what goes into that 4 billion? What is the backup for those numbers? So you can say, oh, that makes sense, or maybe I'd like to understand that better. Okay.
So having your questions developed up front in advance would be preferable.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this will be good. You know, if folks were paying attention earlier, you know, Hadley and David, you know, mentioned that at some point, you know, the Fauntleroy Terminal project has to go through an EIS. You know, as I said, like pretty much any significant project and even some large, you know, developments, like, you know, depending on a large apartment building, depending on the size or where it's located, especially around here where it's often, they're often impacting, literally impacting environmentally sensitive areas. Like a lot of things have to go through an EIS process. Most not quite as major as Sound Transit's, but you know, some sort of process. And so it's a really good opportunity to learn, you know, things that even if you're not as focused on light rail, you may have other projects that you can put this to good use to. And so I'm excited to see us getting back to an education focused workshop. Again, I think that's one of the things we were founded to do. So
Deb, if I have some more questions, can I just call you direct? I just want some general understanding of.
I don't know I'm going to be able to answer him, but
I could run it
That's
by you.
that's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
all right, anything else? Or should we look at possibly adjourning 5 minutes early?
Woohoo. Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that the West Seattle Transportation Coalition adjourn its January 2022 meeting.
So
second.
all those in favor?
Yeah.
All right.
Good to see everyone.
Take care, everybody.
All righty, bye-bye. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Good night.